So I'm Jake Hickerson. I'm the archaeologist for the Basin and Range National Monument, Bureau of Land Management. That's half of my job. And then the other half is special legislation for the Ely district. And special legislation, what we'll be talking about this evening is the Lincoln County Archaeological Initiative, and you'll see how it is funded through special legislation. I'm giving a big shout out for that legislation and talk a little bit about how that all happened. Mainly because it is a perfect storm of legislation that allowed for this Lincoln County Archaeological Initiative to happen. And that was with a couple of land acts, as you're going to see. And I think that the big emphasis on that this evening is that a lot of you are from varied backgrounds, but having the Nevadans for cultural preservation in common, then Rayette was involved in that legislation. That legislation is occurring again in different counties with different federal land sales. That I think that's a really important thing to consider when you look at some of these federal lands that I'll talk about a little bit in special legislation and how it works. Lincoln County is a wonderful place. I've been here for about 8 years with the Bureau of Land Management and spent another 8 years with the Air Force working between Tonopah and Caliente. And it is Lincoln County is a very unique, beautiful high desert environment. That's Mount Irish that we're looking at. I'm going to have pictures throughout the presentation, so that it doesn't get too boring with facts and figures. But Mount Irish in the wintertime, any time of year, is really a very special place. The Lincoln County Archaeological Initiative, as I said, is managed by the Bureau of Land Management and the Ely District Office. So some of the special legislation people, like the program manager, is at the Ely District, and I'm the archaeologist for the special legislation. So Lincoln County, for those of you who may not be aware, Lincoln County is 10,637 square miles. So I like to say that it is larger than the state of Massachusetts. You know, when you look at this, I think I can even use a laser pointer. You see the outline of Lincoln County. It's about 2 hours north of Las Vegas. I think probably to get to the border in southern Lincoln County is probably about an hour and a half. And then to get up to Alamo is about 2 hours, right along Highway 93. But it is a huge area. Then you have the Basin and Range National Monument, which is kind of looks like a fish. It will go up into Nye County to the north here. So that's not in Lincoln County. And with the Basin and Range, there's a little dropping down here. That's the shooting gallery. That's 4,000 acres to the south. So that's the Basin and Range National Monument. I like to say it's bigger than the state of Massachusetts. The monument itself is bigger than the state of Rhode Island. So it is a huge area. And there's only 5,000 people that live in the county. So it is not populated very well. It has some very unique cultural resources, and that's what we're going to talk about. So with special legislation, then there's 2 land acts in the Lincoln County, the Lincoln County Land Act of 2000, and then the Lincoln County Conservation, Recreation, and Development Act of 2004. The first one, the Lincoln County Land Act, is a public law passed by Congress that sold land down near Mesquite, just north of Mesquite in Lincoln County, of which we made $47 million when we sold that and put it into a special fund. And then 4 years later, we had the Lincoln County Conservation, Recreation, and Development Act, and that expanded the law a little bit and allowed for implementation of different things. But both of these laws then were developed into an implementation agreement in 2006 on how were they going to spend the money that Congress allocated. And like I said, it was put into a special fund with the LCRDA, the other land act. We made like $7 million through a right of way with the Coyote Springs just north of the Clark County, Lincoln County border there in southern Lincoln County. So that money was put into a special account, and it was designed, among other things, to be spent on archaeological research within the county. This is kind of an interim break here with the petroglyph that you see. This is at the Gathering in Del Mar. This is not a public site in Lincoln County, but some of you probably know where it is. A lot of people do know where it is. It is a very interesting human figure there. Rayette and I were up there with a few people, and you see the body. It's a pattern-bodied anthropomorph. You see the human figure above and feet. And I go, that's a transformer, from a UFO. And if you see on the inside of the gathering here, then there's a human controlling the inside also. Rayette was like, no, that's a baby. So, yeah, rock art is in the eye of the beholder. And yeah, she's probably right that it is not a transformer from a UFO that visited here in the past, and most likely a baby inside of a person. So with the implementation agreement, then it identifies the processes to be used to authorize the expenditure of the funds from the special accounts, and it's signed by the Bureau of Land Management, Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service, National Park Service. And it created teams to oversee the various issues for the funds of the special account. So when that special account, then those teams were formed, the Lincoln County Archaeological Initiative grew out of the Archaeological Resource Team. And this is one of the areas that you can spend money on that out of that special account. And so LCAI, as we call it for short, is a program that's developed to efficiently solicit and approve funding for projects to identify, evaluate, protect, and manage the unique cultural resources in Lincoln County. So with the Archaeological Resource Team, then it's really a very interesting process that then proponents, contracts, and cooperative agreements will put in their proposals to the Archaeological Resource Team to evaluate. And the Archaeological Resource Team is the BLM archaeologist, that's me, the chairman of it. The SHPO representative, which is Samantha, is a part of the Archaeological Resource Team. Tribal representative, which is not full right now. The BLM, Nevada State Archaeologist. We have Lincoln County Commission representative, Fish and Wildlife, and Forest Service. So the Archaeological Resource Team then, through the solicitation, we go by rounds. We're awarding round 14 right now. 6 projects were through this process awarded, and we are like I said, in the process of awarding them. We've got 3 cooperative agreements that are grants, basically, that are going out, and 3 contracts for this round 14, and we're getting ready for round 15. The process for acquisition, then, it's quite a lengthy process. The proposals, I think we got 15 proposals in January of last year, and went through the process of evaluating those proposals. Then it goes up to a partners working group that will approve and kind of review and make sure that we're doing everything right. Then it goes to an executive committee, which the BLM state director is on that team that finally approves and funds the projects. So this is a Pathfinder, and this is a pictograph that's in the White River Narrows, and it's off the beaten trail, but it is up on a pile on a really cool canyon up on the wall there. And it's called Pathfinder, probably because of the different paths that you can see through here, and it is painted, so that's very unique petroglyph. When you start looking at Lincoln County cultural resources, we do have a lot of rock art, generally rock art in Lincoln County. We have about 4 or 5 public sites that are publicly interpreted in on BLM land that we have made the determination that we can publicly let people know where they are. We have a lot of tribal involvement in education at our rock art sites, but there are a lot of other resources that we work on. So with through round 14, the Lincoln County accomplishments are that we've had 14 rounds and we have awarded over 84 different projects as a part of this acquisition, and over $12 million have been awarded for the LCAI. This is another pictograph that's in Veronica Pass Summit, and it is a very unique set of pictographs that are pretty hard to find, but it's a really very well preserved because it's under a rock and it doesn't get rained on and other things like that. So the paint is really vibrant and just an unbelievable set of pictographs that are most likely from the Fremont and in the that have been coming over from the Utah area into Lincoln County. So as far as our accomplishments through 2024 fiscal year, over 60,000 acres have been inventoried. When you talk about inventorying for archaeology, that's an archaeological survey. So when you talk about acres, then that's quite a big chunk of different parcels throughout Lincoln County that has archaeologists as a part of the project going out there and surveying, inventorying. There's set standards that we use for inventory. So they're out there and taking a good look at the land and recording what is found as far as cultural resources. So they're documenting rock art, they're documenting any structures, any artifacts, the projectile points, other things like that that you may find. And that's quite a big chunk of land in Lincoln County when you think about that getting inventoried in getting a good idea of what cultural resources are there. And it's a pretty important part of managing federal lands is to know what's out there. And usually the only time that we do inventory is when we do have a project that is then inventoried to determine, like we've been working on the Trans-West Express, which is going through southern Lincoln County. That was a huge inventory where they're looking at a power line that's going from Uveda to the southern Clark County border through Lincoln County. And that's the process that normally things get inventoried is projects like that. So over 1,000 sites have been documented with LCAI funds, where they will write the site record, saying what it is, the type of site, and everything like that. Public outreach materials were well over 17 publications. Baseline photographs for monitoring, more than 25 sites, but these are really professional 25 different sites and petroglyph and pictograph areas that have these baseline photos. We have a movie, Point of Time, that was made, the 3D model website. So there is a lot of accomplishments, scientific research, other things like that. The projects that we talked about are rock art, which I've talked about a little bit, and that's research and scientific work on rock art. Education and outreach, the inventory that we talked about, is oftentimes in conjunction with these different projects where they were looking at the first people to arrive in Lincoln County. They're pushing it back 14,000 years ago when humans first arrived in North America. Then that's a pretty interesting time. We would have been in the Pleistocene, so there would have been lakes and rivers, and it would be a totally different environment than the high desert that we have now. So the project is to go out and look at those groups of people, and in the process, they're doing the inventory to look for these sites, and that's been a big part of what we do. Historic archaeology, innovative research, those are all types of projects that we've done here in the 84 different projects that we had. So with rock art research, then probably one of the cooler projects that we've had recently that's just finished last year was rock art research. This is a petroglyph in the shooting gallery, and people call it electric deer. It is quite a fantastic animal, whatever it is, and quite the rock art motif. So the recent project that we worked with was in White River Narrows. And White River Narrows is, as far as the Basin Range National Monument goes, the only National Register property that we have in the monument. There's other places like Mount Irish that are eligible for the National Register, but nobody has put it on the National Register. So the White River Narrows is on the National Register of historic places, and it was one of the first in the late 70s to even get put onto the register. So the management back there for the BLM back in the 70s, when all these laws were passed, this would have been one of the first districts that they put onto the National Register, the White River Narrows. So it does go through the eastern part of the monument. It's has the Highway 318 that goes from Hyco, Alamo, and then it'll go up past Lund, and then it's the quickest way to get to Ely from the south. So that highway goes right through the White River Narrows, and graffiti has always been a problem in the past. So this project started out with Stratum Unlimited, and Yanni Lobser was the prime. He runs Stratum Unlimited. He is one of the best graffiti removers, conservators in the country, in the world, really. And he got an LCAI project in round 10, round 11, to work in the White River Narrows, and he removed graffiti in the amphitheater, which is one of the premier spots in the White River Narrows, and there was really deeply incised graffiti there. So he got that project, and he was working on that, and then he put in for another project for round 13, and a couple of years ago, he started working on this site in White River Narrows, which is the north entrance site, north side. And as you can see here, there's some pretty good graffiti in these panels. These pictures are from another project in LCAI that's kind of looking at the big picture and documenting everything. And it was one of the first LCAI projects where a photographer took these really very good pictures of a lot of the sites for that baseline monitoring. Here's another part of the north entrance site, and you can see that it is really pretty busy. You can see graffiti all over it, Johnson 64, some other graffiti right on the rock art. So when you look at rock art, then this isn't painted graffiti. This is incised graffiti that people had been putting right over rock art, then it is a dilemma when you talk about removing graffiti, because when you look at the different laws, we have ARPA, which is the Archaeological Resource Protection Act, which says that any archaeological resource over 100 years old, if damaged, can be up to a felony for you going in there and destroying it. And you can go to prison for destroying archaeological resources. Then you have the National Historic Preservation Act, which says that cultural resources over 50 years old are cultural resources, anything over 50 years old. So you look at that date of 1964 there, and that's over 50 years old. So by the National Historic Preservation Act, that's a cultural resource. So you need to consider that it's by itself a cultural resource, where it's not an ARPA resource, though, because it's not over 100 years old. So when you look at a management decision for removing graffiti, then it can get a little tricky, because sometimes when you research it, graffiti can be important in itself. Best example of that I've seen is up in Montana, and the Pompeii pillar. He was on the Lewis and Clark expedition. He put some graffiti there in Montana, and it's a national monument now, standing alone. But I would think that it's not on Native American cultural resources in rock art. And so it's a decision that you make. And we went through the process to consult with the tribes and everybody, and made that determination that the graffiti like the 64 here on this rock art's on the National Register for being a natural Native American rock art, that it is something that is taking away from that. It's taking away from its character, integrity, everything like that. So it's a management decision that we went through to determine that we would take and camouflage and conceal the graffiti that wasn't Native American. So in this process, then, you can see that here is some obvious graffiti that is on a panel, and instead of just removing it, Yanni and the people that help him camouflage and conceal it. So it's a process where they'll use different things, try to get the same colors and make it disappear without like just going out there and scrubbing it off with a Brillo pad kind of thing. Because a lot of times when you look at graffiti mitigation, sometimes the cure is worse than what the damage is already. And I have seen where people in the past in White River Narrows went and power washed, painted graffiti off a rock art panel and damaged the rock art with the power wash. So that wasn't a really good thing to do. So that's where Yanni and his company and the people that work with him do a really good job of graffiti removal. And there it is, the before and after. So you can see that he's got some different colors there. It's a little fresher because of the treatment. But the nice thing with Yanni is that he's been coming here for the last 4 or 5 years since his first project, and he's able to see how his treatment is working and touch it up where it might need some touching up. But that's camouflage and concealment of graffiti. Here's another prime example of the north entrance site. And there it is, the before and after. So probably what the most important, interesting thing about this process then is, and it's something that I've been working on since I've got here, is that a lot of times when you look at photography of archaeological sites, especially rock art, then it can be very difficult to get the right time of day to get good rock art. And having seen rock art in a lot of different light and different conditions, it's a kind of you're almost lucky to be able to get the right day to see rock art. Um, I was out there earlier this year, about a month ago, and actually it was St. Patrick's Day. We went to Mount Irish, and we had some rain, and it had dried out a little bit. And it's the first time that I thought about this, is that actually the moisture content in the rock made some of the panels in Mount Irish come out a lot more than I've ever seen. And it's a combination of the light, where you have some shade from the clouds, not direct sunlight, other things like that, that you can get these perfect conditions to get good rock art photos. Because if you look at the archaeological record and a lot of the site recordings, then the archaeologists that are making these, and it's an incredible amount of work that they're doing, where they're photographing 100 different panels at an archaeological site in Mount Irish. So I can understand, they can't wait for the perfect time to get these pictures, but a lot of times these pictures are just broad daylight. You can hardly see the panel, and it's just kind of a washed out picture, and then there's the next one, and there's 100 different pictures like that. So with Yanni, then we've been talking, and this panel that you see right here is, you can see some graffiti over here to the left, but it's in a little bit better condition. You can Photoshop them to make them a little darker and other things like that. But what Yanni did then, and what's really amazing, is that he looked at this panel and he started looking at the patina. And if you know, the patina in rock art kind of suggests the age. And there isn't a really good way of getting the ages, the exact absolute dates out of rock art. They're trying. I don't think it's very successful yet with things like XRF, X-ray fluorescence, to get at dates. But you never know. Things could happen here in the future. So usually when you see the darker patina, then that's obvious that the rock art's been there. And this is a really layered site, that there's stuff underneath here. So when you look at this panel, then Yanni went ahead and looked at the patina, and he digitally enhanced this panel to come up with what he thinks, and it's subjective, what he thinks is a time lapse. And he'll start with the very the deepest, oldest, and he'll say, okay, this is roughly the same time, and he digitally enhances the motif. So he comes up with this as a example of the digital enhancement, where he's making that determination that all of this rock art that you see is relatively close in time. We don't know what time that was, but it's probably 3,000 years ago, and at least. There's no indication. Maybe there's a bow and arrow in there, so it may be 500, 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago. But when you start looking at all of the different motifs, then one of the most amazing motifs came out, and it's this guy here. And when you look at this guy here, then these are branches that are growing out of his head and out of whatever these are. They're actually like a tree branch. And just incredible motif. I've sent this around to people, and nobody can say exactly where this is from. It's not a ancestral Puebloan type of motif or Fremont. The closest, Yanni talked to some people that there's things similar to this in New Mexico. So it is a very interesting process that this has been really rewarding looking at these different types of motifs. And here's Yanni doing the photography. They tried different things, and here they're actually out there at night, and you see them using the different light, and you can see how that motif pops out a whole lot better with that type of um, picture background and lighting and everything like that. So it's been probably the most rewarding project that I've worked on recently, and he should be getting another contract to continue his work in the White River Narrows here with round 14. So that's a really good thing. Now, another area that we've been working on a lot recently is education and outreach. This is the Junior Ranger book that was done a couple rounds ago by Rayette and the SHPO office, that they had a nice cooperative agreement that this is one of the deliverables. And they did a lot of education in Lincoln County. She has developed a resource here that I think Nevadans for Cultural Preservation, Rayette, had been working on, and you should see this, Engage Archaeology in Lincoln County online. So yeah, this is just something that she's put together. We have in early May, we have all of the fourth, fifth, and sixth graders in Lincoln County schools coming to Mount Irish. So this is kind of one of the handouts that she's worked on, and we're going to be handing it out there. But it is a great, because this is a lot of the things that have been done with LCAI. So most all of these are LCAI projects where visit sites virtually. It's got the 3 different areas on our 3D website. Crescent City, which is an old mining site, Red Pit Canyon in the shooting gallery, and then what we call petroglyph rocks now at Mount Irish. And you can take a 3D tour of these. And so this is a project that the northern site, White River Narrows, is actually going to be added to it. That's one of the projects that we're working on right now. And then the Kanaka Kilns. And then they're improving the 3D model. So it's got all of those that you can visit. And those are on our website for the Basin Range National Monument. Junior Ranger book, a link to that. Comic book, the show, the movie that was done, I think around 10 point in time. And it's like a 45-minute, 50-minute movie on how archaeologists do archaeological research. That's really good. People, Places, and History in Lincoln County. And these are the, again, things that Rayette has done. The Nevada Rock Art Foundation books. This Rock Art Ancient Cultural Landscapes is a really good book that people that aren't archaeologists say that it's really well done, that they understand it. So it's not really technical. It's designed for the general public in Great Basin archaeology. Some of the brochures that the Nevada Rock Art Foundation did at their links. Some of the stuff that Rayette has done through Nevadans for Cultural Preservation. I think these historical markers have been a project. The Kanaka Kilns, which again, that we're doing the 3D model here. The Basin Range National Monument map. Mount Irish Trail map, which we are finishing up a project at Mount Irish that was funded partially through LCAI, that created a new campground there and trail. and all for cultural resource protection. And then some of the preservation videos that are all linked there that are in the Nevadans for Cultural Preservation website. So it's a really good resource that a lot of these are LCAI projects that show you where you can get more information on a public facing that you should be able to get to it there. Another good source for public facing information then is on cultural resource management for DRI. And you just have to search for dri.edu and cultural resource management. And a lot of these are LCAI projects. Some of them finished up a couple of years of, but some of them have finished recently here. There's just a series of videos that are really informative, short, and they're just short. Yeah, so all of these, for education purposes, then are really good. And a lot of them are LCAI projects. So, but like I said, we're at round 14. It's been really interesting for the last couple months with acquisition. So just a couple other things, historic research. This is a grave out in Coal Valley, and you're looking at water gap there and what used to be a town site there, historic archaeology. But yeah, here is my oftentimes the best office that I've got where you can peek and see my little truck down there. But Lincoln County is an amazing place. We're at with acquisition, we actually did the cooperative agreements for round 14, and we haven't done the contracts yet because there's been some issues on acquisition procedures for the federal government, if you haven't noticed, over the last couple months. So we're kind of waiting for those to get awarded so that we can then go on to round 14. So for round 15. It's been a wonderful job, but I am getting near the end of my career for the federal government. I should be retiring next year at the latest. But they say 3 bad days I could retire anytime you want. But so trying to find a replacement, that's going to be interesting. But yeah, that's kind of the update.
So does anybody have questions for Jake? Great presentation.
Yeah. I see the one question. It is unique in Nevada for having such a well-funded archaeological initiative. And when you look at the law, then it was, like I said, a perfect storm of legislation where there's kind of 4 things that you can do with this money that we made that $47 million and put it into a special account. And the 4 things are to sell land in Lincoln County, which is what the Liquor law was designed. We're supposed to sell 90,000 acres in that second law. Archaeological research, the habitat conservation plan, which is dealing with endangered species in Lincoln County and wilderness management. And so those are the four things that we can spend out of that money. The special account that we run for LCLA was $47 million in 2005 or whatever. We went into that special account. We've made $10 million in interest on that account. And we have like 20 million left still in that account. And I want that savings account, but it is unique legislation when you think that it's written right into the law. So the other land acts, there is a White Pine County Recreation and Development Act that was developed at the same time as the Lincoln County one. So that's the later bill, but it didn't have an infusion of cash like the Lincoln County's. So it's written the same way, whereas the Southern Nevada, it's not. It's not in there where Congress said that you can spend money. There are things that you can spend money on archaeological research, but it's not written into the law like it was for the Lincoln in the White Pine County Act. So it is unique in that aspect. But, like I said, there is legislation that is being considered for selling federal land, and that's always an issue. I just heard about it. I think it's in like Elko or Winnemucca or somewhere where they're doing similar land acts that we need to pay attention to have that legislation written right into the law. That's one of the things that you can do with the money. So. Yeah, when you look at the websites, then I looked at it for the Lincoln County Land Act, and we have some of it on the Basin Range National Monument, and then we have our own little website. But to get an official website isn't within the purview of the Lincoln County Land Act, and that's because when you start looking at government websites, then I went to the National Operations Center and said, okay, we want to get a website to host this stuff all in one place. And they said, okay, that makes it a national asset. And it'll be $100,000 out of this fund to have them research what the best way to develop this website would be, and it makes it a national application, and similar to some of the BLM sites that you see that are national apps for the BLM, like the lands ones and other things like that. It's like, then to host it, I don't think, we have a little LCAI website if you do look for it, but it's not a great place that we can host a whole bunch of stuff. So. Yeah, the site steward program throughout the state is amazing. And, we have had several LCAI projects that have worked hand in hand with the site steward program. And definitely probably the more rewarding part of my job is working with the site stewards and showing people these amazing cultural resources and being able to, get into the weeds with it. We just had a trip just this last Saturday where we were working on the app to be able to show how monitoring, because that's part of my job also, and how just in this last 6 months I've learned about Mount Irish, just amazing just by looking at site forms and saying, well, I never saw that, or nobody ever showed me that before, and then going out there. Just saw some amazing stuff here in the last 6 months. So it is a really rewarding part of my job. A lot better than the paperwork, that's for sure.